Thanks. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce John Gilbert. So John's truly a pioneer in bringing technology to the real estate industry. I had the chance to speak with him earlier today, and I've read a number of his interviews and watched some videos of him. He attended Cornell and began his career in a variety of roles in city and state government, all with one common element: housing. In '93, he joined Rudin and now serves as a COO, EVP, and CTO. Rudin manages 15 million square feet here in the city, and John also serves as chairman of the Rudin subsidiary Prescriptive Data, which he helped launch. So we really appreciate you coming. I know you're a busy guy, and with our theme being prop tech this year, I thought that you'd have a lot to offer to our prop tech entrepreneurs in the audience, as well as the venture investors that have made the trip. So as I mentioned earlier, you're a pioneer in prop tech, even before that was a term. Back in '95, I guess, you gave a building its first brain with the development on 55 Broad Street. This was long before Internet of Things and smartphones and most of today's current modern tech. Can you share with us what your goal was in starting that process with 55 Broad and other smart buildings?
55 Broad Street. In 1993, when I joined the Rudin family, there was 30 million square feet of vacant space in Lower Manhattan. More space than most cities in America, and in the world for that matter, actually have as a total market. 55 Broad Street had been vacant for 6 years, surrounded by a lot of other vacant space. And we were approached by the city of New York, by the state of New York, to consider creating a technology center. And we had done a lot of research into, first of all, thanking Al Gore for creating the internet for us in 1995 was our number one step. But was really focused on how does real estate fit into this new invention, the internet. And we were the first to actually bring fiber to the desktop. We really we thought that one of our marketing tools was that the real estate is always about location, location, location. We changed that to location, bandwidth, location. And delivering that level of speed and connectivity directly to the desktop. Now people say, oh, you have so much vision. It was nothing to do with vision. It was fear. This building was vacant for 6 years. Every other building on the block had already gone back to the bank, and God bless the Rudins, they hung on to this thing, and we created a space and a community that was then fully occupied within 18 months and helped kickstart the entire renaissance of Lower Manhattan. So it really wasn't vision, Ed. It was fear. It was understanding the regulatory environment. The Congress was trying to convince property owners that they should let every carrier into the building. We're like, we don't have the vertical capacity to run all of this cabling. And so what we came up with was the concept of the building owner should build the on-ramps and the off-ramps to the internet. And we actually put in dark fiber that would connect all the tenants within the building. It did 3 things. First, it gave our tenants multiple choice of carriers, a good thing, solving a regulatory issue with Congress. Second, it gave the carriers a just plug-in infrastructure. They didn't have to run their cabling because it was already there. And we got to sleep at night knowing ultimately that there wasn't going to be spaghetti in our vertical risers and that we could manage these things and deliver bandwidth to where it was supposed to go.
That's interesting. Well, fear can be a great motivator. In 2016, you launched your first building operating system called Nantan and spun that out from Rudin as something called Prescriptive Data. Can you tell us a little bit about the Nantan Platform and how it's used at Rudin?
Sure. We got the idea to create Nantan really right after the recession of '08, President Obama had put together a stimulus package, and a chunk of that money was going to utilities. Let's make the grid smarter. And in effect, prevent what happened on that fateful day in August of 2003 from ever happening again, when 55 million people in the Northeast lost power. Not because there was too little supply or too much demand, but because the grid was basically dumb and binary, and it saw something coming at it that it didn't know what it was, so it defaulted and said, "I'm out. You're out of power." And so Con Ed reached out to us and said, "Hey, you guys are pretty smart in technology. You've been doing this for a long time. Will you please be the commercial office petri dish for this smart grid demonstration project?" And we said, "Yeah, great." And we walk into our first meeting, and on the screen there was a graph that looked like X marks the spot. And it literally, they posed a very interesting question to us, which was, we, Con Ed, had a 45-second early warning that something bad was going to happen. And we want to give, right before the lights went out in August of 2003, and we want to give you, Rudin, at least 30 seconds of that early warning. Do you want it? We're like, yeah, we want it. We can program our elevators. They feel this. Con Ed tells us that there's this dip in frequency in the grid. We program our elevators. They go to the nearest floor. They open up. People get out of the elevator. Lights go out. At least no one's stuck in an elevator. 2 thumbs up. We walk out of that meeting, and I said to Gene Bonnieberger, who's my senior vice president for operations, I said, "Gene, how the heck are we going to do that in 30 seconds? He says, "I have no idea." And so we literally walked around the corner on 14th Street. There's a pretty crummy pizzeria there, but it was someplace to sit down and kind of like figure this out. I pulled out my early version of an iPhone. I put it on the table in front of me. We started talking, and I looked down at this thing, and I said, "You know what? Hello? This has an operating system. Why don't our buildings have an operating system? If we had an operating system, we could literally take external data feeds, mix it with our internal data, and make it actionable within that 30-second period." And we're like, duh, of course that's the right answer. Let's go find whoever, somebody else must have thought about it already. It's a simple concept, right? Let's go find those people, and let's do a deal with them. We went around the world, literally and figuratively. We found pieces, but nobody had really looked at real estate and built environments like an iPhone, where a single integrated platform could take all data that was currently being collected by buildings. Buildings create a huge amount of data. Could integrate that data, could ultimately look at it in real time, wrap machine learning algorithms around it, some preliminary AI. I kind of hate that term because it's so futuristic, and ultimately use that, save money, enhance the experience of that customer, and ultimately give us situational awareness so that we could ultimately run our buildings better. And at that point, we said, since we couldn't find somebody else who had built it, we said, you know what, we got to build this ourselves. And that's what we went out and did. And again, God bless the Rudins. They supported this. Bill Rudin had one rule. If this system, whatever the heck you're building, doesn't attract or retain customers, get rid of it. I'm not interested at all. And what's been amazing about it is that the new relationship, it came up at the panel this afternoon, I believe the woman from Tishman Speyer talked about this, is that we now say our old job was buy a piece of dirt, dig a hole, pour a foundation, set steel and glass, lease it up. Now we do all that, but now it's all about collect data, remember it, learn from it, and share it. Most importantly, and share it as quickly as we possibly can with our customers. Because the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500, the Fortune 1000 in the world care deeply about how they can express and message to the world what they're doing as a corporation, how they, in terms of sustainability, in terms of benchmarking data, and they can't solve that problem. They can't answer that question without the help of the property owner. And unless we as property owners get that and understand that and share that, then we're not doing our job. So we came full circle back to Bill Rudin's premise, which was, yeah, this is an unbelievable way to not only attract and retain customers. This is why you need your 30,000 feet in a Rudin building. That that this truly is the moment where property owners as well as corporate customers come together and ultimately solve a big problem, a societal problem that we all care about.
So understand how you would pull data, Nantan or other building operating systems would pull data from internal sources. But from the external sources, like the example you just cited, getting information in real time about a surge in the electric grid or fluctuation, how hard was it to integrate with the utilities? Were they easy? Do you have an API does Nantan have APIs with each of the utilities? How did you make that happen?
Well, the beauty of the Rudin leverage, and when we look back at it now, Ed, there's a reason why Siemens of the world and the Honeywells of the world and the Johnson Controls of the world couldn't build this. And they've come to us and said, we've been trying for 20 years to build this. And the short answer is that, well, the reason why you couldn't and can't and didn't is because you don't run buildings. You know, the domain expertise of the Rudin family, our top echelon of building operators, when you add up the number of years that they've worked at Rudin and the job that they've done, it's over 300 years of collective experience. As Jack Rudin used to say, these guys are the best chilled water makers in New York. So the ability, that domain expertise, and I call it any Star Trek fans here, Vulcan mind meld. It really is a Vulcan mind meld between our operating engineers and some really smart programmers, data scientists, the team that we've built at Prescriptive Data. We're over 30 employees now. Basically seeing what they do and putting it into creating software and ultimately coming up with a product that, you know, many people have said to us, this is truly revolutionary. We've cut our operating expenses by 55 cents a foot just on energy. Across our 10 million square feet, that's $5.5 million. Put a 5 cap on that. You can do the math pretty easily in terms of value creation. But more importantly, it's cut our hot and cold calls by 70 to 80%. So the customer's getting a better product. They're paying less for that product. And ultimately, we're able to use that data that we collect today to be smarter tomorrow to do a better job. And as you know, as we see that you know, it makes us proud and happy, but then from a situational awareness, we're able to take that even further, and as we get more and more granular from a data collection standpoint, we get smarter. So the leverage that Rudin had, you know, this was not a decision that I made, but had always been a Rudin protocol, never have one vendor. So we already had building management systems with Honeywell, with Johnson, with Siemens, with Schneider. So we already, when we went to them and said, listen, we're going to build a driver from our gateway to your BMS, first it was like, huh, what do you want that for? And at first, when we were in stealth, we couldn't tell them. But since we had the leverage, we could do it. So if I'm a smart mechanical electrical engineer from Caltech or MIT, I go knocking on Siemens' door. They're like, get out of here. We're Rudin. You're our customer. We want this. So we were able to get that done.
That's a great thing with that kind of leverage. So you gave the example earlier about the getting people out of elevators if the power is going to go out. What other examples of the use of this data, concrete examples that we could get our heads around that your customers and Rudin benefit from?
Sure. You know, Aaron Block brought up at the panel this afternoon water. It was somebody asked a question about it. So right now, and what Nantan really does is it memorizes rhythms. So we've had 4 different situations in the last 6 months where the rhythm of water consumption got out of whack in multiple different buildings. And Nantan is alarmed, sees that in the middle of the night, understands that it's like your heart going into AFib, that something wrong is going on, isn't able to send a text and an email directly to the building manager, and he gets his tail down to the building, finds there's a flushometer in a tenant space that burst in the middle of the night, water's rushing to the elevator pit, and boom. That's why I asked Sean this afternoon about, when are the insurance companies going to understand that this data, the fact that I know that if something like that happens, that Nantan is going to fix that and decrease the propensity of that claim being much larger and the damage being much larger. Because I have that system, my insurance rate should go down. So, that's something that Aaron and I are going to talk about after this. So it's water. We start at the top, right? What are the two biggest expenses? You got taxes, you got utility, energy, you've got water. Labor, becomes more interesting in term when you begin to look at the efficiency of, when machines can talk to each other. Is there an opportunity to decrease labor, or at least reapply that labor to another job that they can do? So we're working on that. But I think, to me, the biggest issue is really, one of our big customers is the largest asset manager in the world. And what we've done with them is they have 16 floors at 40 East 52nd Street. And they're very much, they want to win the mayor's carbon challenge as a corporate entity. And across our portfolio, Rudin, we've cut our electrical consumption by 41%, our carbon by 44%, and our steam consumption by 48%.
That's great.
Just using Nantan, as well as other hardware and sensor technology that we're using. When we included the very granular data, because what we're doing with them is we're giving data on a floor-by-floor basis, and occupancy data is the most important thing. We need to talk about that. But they added another 14% reduction on top of what we've already done at the building level. So you start to see that the more granular data that you can collect, the more willingness you have to share this data. There's huge implications ultimately for the planet, for the design of new buildings, because we don't need as much electricity and air distribution as one would think if we're more efficient about how we use those resources. It's a huge opportunity ultimately to really change the world and do better.
So it's such a powerful tool for Rudin buildings that I understand that you're selling it through to other landlords. Has that process come easily? Is it like breaking rocks trying to sell Nantan, or do other landlords really get it and just are adopting it easily?
Well, truth be told, it was at the beginning, there were some of our friendly and unfriendly competitors whose doors we knocked on who said, why would I put a Rudin technology in my building? We've overcome that because of the more people have adopted it. We've got the largest REIT in the United States. We've got the largest bank in the world. We've got the largest state-owned utility, largest asset manager in the world that I mentioned. So as we begin to message that, I think people realize, you know what? Number one, and when we built Nantan, what we didn't want to have happen, Ed, was I didn't want to die a death of multiple dashboards. And to the prop tech companies out there that are here, number one, when you're developing a product, focus on solving the problem. Don't focus on the technology. Real estate people really are solutions-based. And what they want is problems that they have, pain points that they have solved. They don't care about the technology. And, God bless Steve Jobs. He was the one who said it first. He said it shouldn't be about the technology. It should really be about the experience and what creative, well-meaning people do with the technology to solve societal problems. That's the way real estate thinks. I think the real estate industry understands. I think there's a bunch of things that we've all learned, right? One is we don't want to die a death of 1,000 dashboards. So what Nantan is really foundational technology that will future-proof your building. We've built it as a true OS so that applications that are developed by prop tech companies can plug into that. There can only be a single, properly, there can be multiple, but if you want to have a safe, secure building, there should only be one connection to your building management system. That should be Nantan, and then everything else plugs into Nantan. And most importantly, that the data that is derived from your particular app then feeds the brain to make the brain smarter faster. That's the way we've looked at it from an architectural standpoint, and I think people are getting that because all of us are getting the same phone calls from all the same prop tech companies. Please let me put this in your building. But at the end of the day, unless you have a foundational platform like Nantan, ultimately you can't test that data and compare it to all other data sets. We actually have a dynamic graph in Nantan where whatever data feed that I'm looking at, I can correlate it immediately with any other data feed that I'm already collecting, so that I immediately see a correlation and immediately can ascertain value simply by seeing those two graphs overlaid on top of each other.
Let's change gears a little bit and talk about, I think, a project that you were very fond of, Doc 72. Can you tell us all a little bit about the project and what inspired it?
Sure. Well, Adam Newman, who we know very well, who's the 11th
Founder of WeWork.
Founder of WeWork, the 11th richest man now in all of Israel, came to us, and it was right after Hurricane Sandy. And we had a building at 110 Wall Street that was severely damaged by Sandy. It wiped out all of our mechanicals. We literally had to, gut everything. He came to us, and we were literally crawling up on the roof and through the building. And he said, "Listen, I want this building to be our first WeWork, We Live. And we're going to do WeWork in the basement or in the base, and we're going to do We Live in the top." And kind of as a throw-in after that, and we did the deal, and he said, "Listen, I just negotiated an amazing deal with the Brooklyn Navy Yard." Everybody knows the Brooklyn Navy Yard, right? So Adam said, "Hey, I got this deal, but they won't let me build it. I need a partner." So we did the deal. It's actually us and Boston Properties working together, and the building will open in September. Very, very exciting. It'll be the only building in New York that's surrounded by water on 3 sides. It'll be as advanced technologically as any building in the world. Ubiquitous Wi-Fi, Internet of Things network, Nantan, obviously powered by Nantan, and amazing. If you've never been in the Navy Yard, and it's hard to get in there because there's dual security, because it's where they build the Mars rover, and a lot of military stuff and top secret stuff going in there. New Lab is an unbelievable manufacturing facility in there, but the views are just stupendous. I mean, you literally can stand on the terrace at Dock 72, see downtown Brooklyn, downtown Manhattan, and midtown Manhattan, and it's just like poof, in your face. So we're really excited about this project. WeWork will be moving in September 1st, if not before, and we've created a Tenant Experience App. One of the things that people say, "Hey, Gilbert, what's your definition of a smart building?" And that's evolved, right? From 55 Broad Street, it was all about bandwidth. Now it's all about, a smart building has to have 3 distinct digital conversations. One, with your fans, pumps, and motors, elevators, anything mechanical. They need to speak to each other. Secondly, you need a digital conversation into the C-suite of your corporate customers. And third, and certainly not least, but you need to have a digital conversation with everybody who walks into that building, who's either works there, lives there, or visits. And what we've created is a tenant experience app, and there's a lot of companies creating tenant experience apps out there. But what ours does is that rather than that data going out the back door and being monetized by somebody else, it literally stays within the building to make the brain smarter faster. So that, and the woman from Tishman Speyer, very interesting conversation this afternoon on the panel, which all of this data, just understanding, again, remember we understand patterns, we remember those patterns, we learn from those patterns. When we look at people patterns, and what's the most important sensor in a building? It's this thing, right? When are you coming into the building? When are you ordering food? When are you how often do you complain about it's too hot or too cold? What needs to be fixed? Are you letting us know? All of that data becomes hugely informative ultimately to the building owner, to how we design our next building, how we manage this building, how ultimately we deliver a product and a level of experience directly to the people who live, work, or visit that building. So we think it's very, very important to have those three distinct conversations, and we've built apps that do each one of those.
I would also recommend to anyone who hasn't been to the Naval Yard to check out the design of the building too. It's a really uniquely designed building and beautifully done.
Thank you.
So John and I were talking earlier today about things that prop tech companies have to think about as they sell to the large real estate investment family offices. And he mentioned something that I was unaware of, the data bill of rights that many of the large property owners in the city have been talking about. Can you talk a little bit about that, just for those entrepreneurs who aren't aware of what that is?
Sure. As you may be aware, there are multiple groups, and we happen to be on most of them, of property owners that are literally focused on prop tech from the owner standpoint. And this is very unique in that, whether it's, us and Brookfield beating each other up, chasing the same tenant and fighting tooth and nail on a deal, and yet when it comes to technology, we're all sitting around the same table and we're all talking about it, we're all sharing notes, and ultimately coming up with a taxonomy I don't know if that's the right term, but really to look at, okay, these are the things that we do every day. Do we have an analog solution today? What's the best digital solution that's out there in the marketplace? Let's compare notes. Maybe we'll invest in that company, maybe we won't. That's your call. But ultimately, there's an amazing conversation and a coming to terms with, guess what? We're all getting the same calls. We're all trying to solve the same problems, and let's do this together. So this concept of the data bill of rights we came up with, and it starts with, it's the owner's data. So if you're a prop tech company or if you're a venture capitalist that is investing in a prop tech company and you have a product that is based upon that data being somebody others than the property owner, good luck. Because property owners look at these buildings very, very carefully and possessively and say, listen, I bought the dirt, I paid for the construction, I paid for the leasing, I took the risk, no one's coming into my building and taking the data out the back door and thinking that they can monetize it. Bill of rights, number one. Number two, if you're a prop tech company and you want to come into our buildings, you sure as hell better have thought about cybersecurity. And you sure as heck better have thought about, getting your SOC 2, SOC 3 certifications. And you sure as heck should think about ultimately connecting with an open API so that if a building owner does have a system like Nantan, that your app can plug into that so that the data can be utilized. And we're looking at it not so much as this is a decree, but to ultimately educate prop tech companies as to these are the things that building owners care about. These are the things that we want to instruct you. We want to work with you. We believe in the prop tech movement. We are the part of the largest asset class in the world, and yet we want you to know that these are the things that we care about and ultimately will ask you to address and be part of.
So outside of the prescriptive data initiative, is Rudin investing in prop tech, directly or indirectly through funds or into exciting companies?
We are. And we're pretty, I'm sure everybody's read the book One Up on Wall Street, right? We all read that many, many years ago. And it's all about invest in what you know. And so what we've done is we've really identified, again, this is our blocking and tackling. This is what we do every single day. Do we have an analog or a digital solution? If we have an analog, then let's go find the best digital. If we have a digital solution, let's make sure it's the best in breed and the best in show. And so we were looking at a smart lock company, and we looked at them all, and we invested in Latch. We were looking for a residential leasing platform, and we invested in Nestio. We were looking for a commercial leasing platform, and we invested in Hightower, which ultimately merged with VTS, and they were beating each other up. And if you are a prop tech company or a VC, that Hightower VTS story is very instructive in terms of how the industry looks at this. One of the problems we're trying to solve, and I believe this is one of your companies, Aaron, in Radiator Labs. What's the problem we're trying to solve? We're trying to solve, we own a lot of 70 and 80-year-old buildings that are literally dumb as dirt from a heating standpoint. The middle of winter, walking down the streets of New York, and you look up and you see people have their windows open. It's like, what? That drives me nuts. So the problem we're trying to solve is how do you create thermostatic control in a 70, 80-year-old building where you don't have thermostatic control, and all you're doing is taking a commodity like oil or gas, heating up water, running it through a closed loop, and expecting good things to happen. Well, good things don't always happen, and you've got imbalance. And so how do we solve that? And Radiator Labs is an interesting company that we like a lot, needs a lot of work, but they're attacking a big problem. So again, we start with a problem and we go looking for a solution. We don't think about technology. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Let's go solve it.
So what problems are you facing that you wish somebody would work on solving, maybe that would inspire some of the people here in this room?
Now, we're really into the blockchain thing. We like that. We like it as a platform, and we think, and this also came up in the panel today, from a transactional standpoint, there's something there. There's definitely something there. So that's something that we're spending a lot of time on. The insurance thing is we're really trying to figure out how do we coordinate our data so that we can present that when we're renewing our annual liability and property insurance. That's a big deal for us because that's a huge amount of money. If anybody's renewed lately, the markets are really, really bad from a purchaser standpoint. So those, I think, would be the top two that we're focused on right now.
And finally, the question we talked about earlier this afternoon, we've just talked a lot about the opportunities and how much exciting new initiatives are happening in real estate driven by technology. What keeps you up at night? What do you worry about?
I'm really worried about our political environment. And it's, the middle's got to stand up. We're being pulled to the right, we're being pulled to the left. In the city of New York, in the last 6 months, we told Amazon to go take a hike. We basically created a ridiculously stupid carbon tax, and don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of reducing carbon, but this is what this bill does. It basically says to property owners, we don't care how efficient your building is. We're gonna fine you. We're not even gonna tax you. We're gonna fine you unless you hit certain per square foot carbon thresholds. Now we've analyzed, obviously we know these numbers like the back of our hand, and the buildings where we're going to get fined are the buildings where it's not what we've done. This is a portfolio that's decreased our electric by 41, carbon by 44%, and steam by 48%. But because of what the customers in our buildings do, we're gonna get fined like $13 million. So everybody from New York, everybody who's not from New York knows that New York is the city that never sleeps. But guess what? What this bill would basically they're asking me to do is go knock on KPMG's door and say, hey guys, I know it's tax season, but the lights are going off. You can't work around the clock. And go to Blackstone and say, you know what? I know you're working on this big 6 or 7 M&A deals at the same time. You can't work after hours. How is that? And our buildings and those buildings that are filled with tech companies, filled with companies that work around the clock because they're meeting global markets and they're working in global markets, so they can't ever sleep. Those are the buildings that are going to get penalized. How is that good for New York? How is that good ultimately for commerce? The final bill, that just passed this week, is a sweeping change in rent regulation that will literally destroy the American dream for anybody who owns a small or medium-sized multifamily building in the city of New York. It basically says that you have one opportunity to improve an apartment in over a 15-year period, and we will let you spend $15,000 to upgrade that apartment. If you spend another nickel, you don't get any incentive. And this is after facing zero in rent increases. So what keeps me up at night is, number one, the demonization of anybody who, and listen, I'm speaking to the people in the world who make the most risky investments because you're venture, right? You start at seed level and you're looking at a group of young people who have an idea, and maybe that's all, and a team, and you're putting money into them. And you know better than anybody else that money flows where it's welcome. Well, if you destroy incentives and the residential, the rent control thing, that's just one little piece that I mentioned. You get no incentives for replacing a roof or new windows. So if you're prop tech and you're developing a product that wants to go into multifamily residential, well, guess what? Your customer just lost billions of dollars of value. Billions of dollars of value. Now, we own 2,500 apartments. We're not going to starve. But if I'm a small immigrant property owner who bought a building, and we all have aunts and uncles and fathers and mothers who have done this, and I own that building, I just got crushed. All for because I think that landlords are bad and that they shouldn't, they're all rich. It's really, really scary. And so that's what keeps me up at night, because you add those three things up, it's billions of dollars we lost with Amazon. It's billions of dollars that property owners are going to have to pay to up, because if this carbon tax bill was a bill that I could invest my way out of, I'm all in. How am I going to control KPMG's consumption? How am I going to control Blackstone's consumption? I can't invest my way. I can't spend the money to make my buildings more efficient. I've already done that. So, sorry for that rant, but ultimately, the middle's got to stand up. We cannot hide behind press releases that are nonsensical. We have to dig deeper. My wife Diana's here. She's an artist. Pablo Picasso, right before he died, said something really, really interesting. He said that computers were overrated. Now, I'm not a world-renowned technologist, but he said the reason why computers were overrated because they only gave us answers. And what's important in life is asking the right question and framing that question in a way that can solve a problem that people care about and is relevant to them. And that's what we as a society have to do. We have to frame the question and dig deep enough to be able to look people, our elected officials, in the eye and say, you know what, you're saying this bill does that, but it really does this. You're wrong. And let's do it the right way. Let's work together to do it the right way.